Okay, it's the top of the hour here, so we'd like to get started. Welcome to our June instalment of the Meetoo Customer Success webinar series. As always, we're going to be using Meetoo today, so please connect to our Meetoo session via the instructions that are on screen now. So download Meetoo from your iOS or Apple or iOS or Android app stores even, or access the web app at web.meetoo.io, and then enter the meeting ID for this session, which is 155-888-367, and we will have a reminder of that on all of our slides today, so you can join in whenever you like. So previously on these sessions we've focused on particular types of meetings that Meetoo is regularly used at, so that's university lectures, internal meetings or town halls, as well as some virtual meetings. So we thought it was about time that we invited you to one of the other popular meeting types for Meetoo, which is large events and conferences. These types of meetings pose a very different set of challenges to organisers, the hosts of those, as well as presenters, which means that the approach and the considerations for deploying a tool like Meetoo should also be really different. And some of the questions we often get asked are, how do I get all my presenters to use the app? How do we get our audience to use the app? How do we ensure that we actually get value and use the app really well? As well as how do we actually manage the app during the event. So, these are just some of the questions and challenges faced by conference organisers. So we've put together this agenda for the session to hopefully help you use Meetoo successfully at your next event. So, just jump down. So there's three main areas of focus, and these are practical tips for maximising the value of Meetoo and ensuring success, how a self-service tool like Meetoo can benefit from additional professional services, as well as how to guarantee audience engagement and satisfaction. And to help us here today, we've got a true expert. So I'd like to welcome Chris Elmitt from Crystal Interactive Meetings today, who's kindly agreed to join us. And so thanks very much again. But for the benefit of those who don't know so much about Crystal and yourself, if you just take a moment just to explain that for us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Dermott. It's great to be here with you. Really looking forward to this session. So for anyone who doesn't know, Crystal Interactive specialises in live event technology, and that really has three parts. The first thing is that as a company, we scour the world and find the best software that we think our delegates at conferences want to use, and that's how we meet people like Dermott and the team at Meetoo. So we source technology for events, and then around that we wrap two things. The first is advice for people wanting to use the technology, the best way to use that. So some advice services around that. And then also when it comes to the event, deploying technology in large meetings can often be quite stressful and quite complicated. So we provide support in the shape of people on site, people available to upload content to technology, working with Wi-Fi and those sorts of things to help people have a smooth ride with technology in live events.
Brilliant, thanks Chris. And for those of you that don't know, Meetoo has formed a great partnership with Crystal Interactive Meetings, and with Meetoo being predominantly a self-service tool, up until now our customers have been able to access our customer success resources and support via online, by phone and by email. But actually now with this partnership, our Meetoo customers have got more options and more comprehensive range of service packages to suit all their needs. And personally, I know some of our customers have used Crystal recently and in the past, and I always feel very assured when there's a Crystal team member on site to help them out. So just want to kick things off with a poll today. So to add a little bit about you and how you use Meetoo. So where do you primarily use Meetoo? Is it in an educational setting, small business meetings, in a face-to-face environment, a larger business meeting or conference style session, again as face-to-face or in a virtual meeting environment, a bit like this webinar today. So I'll just give you a couple of seconds to look at that. As you can imagine, we get quite a variety of people on here, but certainly the results of this will help us drive the direction of this session to hopefully be as relevant as possible to all of you that are on today. Okay, I think we can take that result there. And we'll just have a look. Okay, right, so I guess judging by the title of our session today, actually most people are interested in the larger business meetings, but still a fair few on the smaller meetings. And interestingly, that virtual meetings is quite low on there. That's certainly a meeting format that's becoming far more popular these days, isn't it? So I expect to see that if we ask this again, maybe in 6 months or a year's time, that should hopefully be even more. Okay, thanks very much for that. So I think we can move swiftly on and get Chris to start talking about some of these practical tips for maximising the value of Meetoo and ensuring success. So over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Dermott. So when I think about this question, that you can imagine there's a huge number of tips and there's an awful lot of things that you can try when you're trying to get the best out of Meetoo. But what I thought I'd do at this stage was just to focus in on one aspect of this, and the aspect I want to focus in on is the way that you get speakers to engage with this technology and actually use it as part of their presentation. If there was one thing that disappoints an event organizer at the end of an event, is that their speakers didn't engage enough with using technology. It's been the case for literally for decades. So if we think about it, one aspect of that is when is the best time to inform speakers about the availability of a tool like Meetoo. Literally, when do you tell them about it? When do you educate them? And what I'd like you to do is on this webinar is use Meetoo to tell me which of the following 4 opportunities you would take to introduce the technology. So here's your speaker on stage. They're giving their presentation and wowing the audience. I'll give you a clue, that's too late. By then you can't tell them about Meetoo, but you could tell them about it the day before. You could tell them about it a week before. You could tell them a month before, or you could tell them as soon as possible, i.e. as soon as you've decided to use Meetoo. Okay, so those are your 4 options, and what I'd like you to do now is to use Meetoo to tell me which of those 4 you instinctively would use. Okay, so just press anywhere from 1 as soon as possible through to 4 the day before, and let's see how you respond. 29 people logged into Meetoo at the moment out of about 43 or so. So let's see if we can get all 29 to vote, and the others of you, please try and connect for the ensuing votes. Just about there. Okay, we've got 29 out of, great, 26 out of 30. I'll give that 5 more seconds. Terrific. Okay, there we go. So let's have a look at what you said. So we're closing the vote now, and we'll take a look. And what we can see here is that 46% of you, nearly half of you, say, let's tell them as soon as possible. The next group are saying, 34.6 are saying a month before, and then we've got 20% of people saying somewhere between the week before and the day before. And that's all, that's probably as I would expect. And there's a logic that says the sooner you tell them, the more likely they are to use it. Actually, what's happening at those different stages, so if we just take those time points and say what's going on, so the day before is the rehearsal, the week before might be slide development, in the month before the speaker is thinking about their presentation and forming some initial thoughts, and then as soon as possible is obviously when you've identified the speaker. And so what we find is, even though we want to get in touch with them as soon as we've identified the speaker and we know we're using Meetoo, unfortunately this speaker is going through a not very helpful creative process, which is called procrastination, Dermott. So basically what happens is someone agrees to do a presentation and then they put it right to the back of their mind and don't think about it until they get frightened. Okay, and the problem is, if we try and educate them at that point, they're just not connecting with the possibilities because they haven't actually got any idea what they're going to say. My experience, for the third of you who said that this is about the time to do it, is at the time that they are thinking about their ideas for the presentation, that's the very best opportunity to get them to think about how to use Meetoo. Because if they've already developed their slides and then you tell them about Meetoo, what they say is, so you're asking me to take a slide out that I've already developed in order to build a slide in, that's an interactive question. So they feel like they're kind of doing a rework or more work. And that's why getting them early is the best way to do it, when they're already focused on the presentation, but before they've got all their slide deck lined up. That's the kind of experience that I find. The other thing that I find with meeting organisers is if you're organising a meeting, you must be in contact with these speakers and get engaged with those conversations around idea development. Don't let them fob you off and say, yeah, it's in development. Actually find out what they're thinking about doing, because otherwise you miss out on that moment to introduce the interactivity. So is that kind of clear as one thing that you can think about in terms of getting the best use?
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that, and it's it's an age-old problem, isn't it? How do you get them at the right point? But another challenge that we often face is people that just don't want to use it, either through fear or had a previous bad experience. How do you convince people that actually the whole concept is a good idea?
Yeah, so I mean that is a big problem, and no one wants to look foolish on stage, and generally that means they're a bit risk adverse. So the first thing is, rather than offering interactivity to every speaker in your agenda, look at the agenda critically and say, which are my speakers where I'm going to have the best traction with this? Who is most likely to actually want to engage with this? Because they're confident, they like trying new things, and they're not scared of their audience. So in the first instance, aim for the ones who are likely to go for it. So the lady up there who looks very confident at ease, rather than someone who's going to stand up and quiver in their boots. But the second thing that you can do is you can do the interaction for them. So quite often we help clients where before a speaker gives their presentation, we run a poll through the meeting moderator or whoever to get a sense of what people want to talk about, and then we hand that result over to the speaker to say, you're going to talk about X, which is great, and your audience have just told you that they particularly want you to focus on Y. And so you can actually handle the polling for them if you've got someone who's a chair or a moderator, and that can work well too.
That's some really good advice. And in terms of the polling questions, do you ever give people questions to use themselves and then to edit, or do you ask them to generate that content?
At the end of the day, they will know best what the questions should be, but we can definitely help them to think in terms of different types of questions. So to give you a very quick example, when I'm thinking about polling, in my view, there's three things that you can do with polling. You can use polling to find out what people know, so literally to baseline the knowledge in the room by asking them a question and saying, tell us which is the correct answer. So find out what people know. The second thing is you can ask people what they feel. So you can ask them questions around how confident they are, how clear they are, those sorts of questions. Mm-hmm. And the great thing about those voting questions is that you can run them, at the beginning of a process and at an end of a process to see how you've got a shift. And then the third one is that you can ask people what they think. So we are a company, we face this challenge. How do we address it? Do we do A or B or C? And there you have no answer. You genuinely want to know what your audience think you should be doing. And those are the most valuable, but of course also the most risky, because then you kind of got to go with what your audience say.
Yeah. Oh, great stuff. Thank you. So if we move on to our second agenda item now. So in terms of Meetoo, it's generally a self-service tool, and people go out, they use it themselves if they're feeling confident enough. But certainly from the services that you provide, Meetoo can definitely benefit from those additional services. So if you just explain a little bit more about how that happens.
Yeah, of course. So I mean, I will start by saying that for those of you who use Meetoo and you've used them in live events, it is a great self-service tool. It's simple. Even I can program it, which is a very low threshold, Dermott. So I think that's a good sign. But the sorts of things that people come up against is not usually to do with the software. It's actually to do with the things that go around it. So if I just run through that quickly, everyone, when they're thinking of event technology and they're evaluating, for instance, whether to use Meetoo, they want to know about the software. So how many concurrent users can you have? What are your question options? What are the different ways you can handle free text and so on? And those are all good questions to ask. But actually, if you're looking at a result for your event, the software is only one component. There's other bits that go around it. And this is what we call the event technology iceberg. This is the stuff that people don't think about until it's either too late or until they've been through it once and they're doing it a second time. So just to give you some examples, the first one is what devices are delegates using? Okay, so there are some instances where audiences all have up-to-date phones. They might be issued by a company. They're absolutely ready to go and they know how to use them. There are other situations where you've got guests coming who don't want to use their own phone. They don't want to download an app. On principle, it's their phone, not yours, and therefore you need to provide some devices for those people. Quite often we find that might be 10 or 20% of the audience, not everyone, but you need to have a plan for that. The second and biggest one for me is if you're using a technology which enables live voting, you must have the Wi-Fi infrastructure to support it. And the problem that a lot of meeting organisers face is that they get a kind of generic spec from the software provider, like they can find out from Meetoo, and they present it to the venue, and then the venue kind of responds with a completely different set of explanations. And the person's left in the middle saying, I've been asked for strong Wi-Fi, and I get told that there were 1,000 people here last week and everything was fine. It's like, does that mean there's strong Wi-Fi or not? And so for some people where it really matters, actually doing an audit of the Wi-Fi infrastructure just gives you the peace of mind to say, someone has come in, they've looked at this Wi-Fi, and they've told you that barring a power cut or a cable being pulled out, this will be up to the job. So that's a second example. And there are many more. I won't labour them, but it's really important to think about how delegates learn to use the app. So in this session, you did a soft icebreaker where people participated. As it happened, less people participated in that one because they were joining, and then we got more people voting on the second question that we did. That sort of journey is one that everyone should be doing in every event. And if you're organising an event, carving out that bit of time to educate the delegates, as you well know, Dermott, is a really good investment, because then everyone's ready, everyone's got it, and you can move on with confidence. Talking about Meetoo, it's simple to use, but sometimes if you've got 7 different speakers, they're generating questions at different times, sometimes you just want someone to keep hold of all of that stuff and make sure that the Meetoo element is being plumbed in a proper and safe way and is being checked. So there's another thing that we do. In terms of running the voting live, some clients are very happy to have one of their team doing it, working with the AV team, but very often they actually want someone that they can just lean on to do that. And as you know, that's something that we do an awful lot. And then finally, what do you do with the outputs? So you've got these vote results. What do you actually do with the outputs? Well, having that conversation in advance of the event, sharing stories of what worked with other clients in similar situations, that's also something that we like to do. So who manages the data kind of coming out at the back end of the event? So those are the sorts of things. And when I say who in all of those questions, it's a genuine question. There's a lot of clients who do all of this stuff themselves, they have the skills in-house, and that works really well. But if they don't, those are the sorts of places where people need the services from us.
Oh, cool. So we've got a good question here from Ian Waterston. So he said, a lot of our events have our staff as interviewers, moderators, but they don't engage until the week before an event. Any tips to get them engaged with both technology and interviewees sooner?
Yes, good question, and that's a problem. I mean, what I would say is I would focus my preparation so that when they're ready, we're ready. Okay, so if they genuinely will not engage until a week before the event, then you just need to work really, really fast. With an interviewer and a moderator, there is more flexibility because they're not creating content as such. It's not like they're creating 27 slides that they're determined to crash through. They are there to link up the different sections, and therefore voting is an intrinsic part of that and works quite well. But outside of that, Ian, the other thing you can try is fear, and because most people have had a situation where they have, that either the intention has been to use technology and it just got underused, or indeed the technology got used, but it was clear that it was a suboptimal use. But the biggest thing is, I'm a realist. I've been in events long enough to know that when people aren't ready to talk to us, then there's no point speaking. We just need to be ready to move really fast and really decisively when they engage.
Thanks. Great question there, Ian. So just for those of you that may not be on Meetoo yet, we will be doing a bit of a Q&A session at the end with a bit of time. But if you go to web.meetoo.io, and then our meeting ID is 155-888-367, and we'll take your questions afterwards. So, okay, if we move on to our last main section of the session. So what I'd like Chris to talk about here now is how to guarantee that the audience actually engage in it and we get some satisfaction from the use of the app.
Yeah, okay, great. So This is a really important area. So we've talked about it, if you like, from the speaker side a little bit. We've talked about it from the event organizer side. Now let's talk about it from the participant side. And again, there's many things that we can discuss, but I pulled out just a couple of things to think about, some of which I've touched on already. So the first thing is about your question design. Okay, so the first thing is don't ask pointless questions. Okay to have a warm-up, and the warm-up can be a little bit light, but after that, people like to get into the meat of the conversation, and being asked, questions that really aren't helping the conversation, aren't helping the meeting, people will quickly disengage from that, and you'll see that in the usage. But if you're wondering what a pointless question is like, sparing blushes, I have seen this one. Okay, so the question was, are you signed into Meetoo? Yes or no? And I don't know how you go about answering no to that question, but that was one that we've done. But if that's at the sort of flippant end, let me show you another one, which was asked, well, this is the question. Okay, am I paid too much, yes or no? That was asked by one of the CEOs of one of the 30 largest companies in the UK. Okay, now, in the end, I managed to talk him out of it, but that is a really foolish question to ask, because what's everyone going to say? They're obviously going to say yes, and then you're going to look really foolish. So it's really good to, just to have a critical eye at these questions and say, look, is a participant getting something from answering this? Because if they don't, then don't do it. The second one, more of a kind of geeky technical thing when it comes to voting, but the second thing is also to be clear about the questions you ask. And most often this is when you're doing a scale. So boring scales are things like, on a scale of 1 to 5, how clearly do you understand this topic? Okay, that's a boring scale. And some people say, okay, that's a bit of a boring scale. So I do want to do something a bit more interesting. But the problem that they then do is that they kind of get a bit kooky with the options. So here's an example. Actually, I've actually made this one up, Dermott, but you can see the problem with this one. Do you like our webinar? And the answer is loads, very much, kind of, or could be shorter. Now, what frustrates delegates with these not consistent options is that they say, well, I kind of like it, but it could be shorter. So I want to answer 2 of those, or A and B, they're kind of the same thing. So which one do you want me to answer? And those sorts of things can build frustration. And you only need a little bit of that frustration to well up in your meeting, and you start to lose people, and that's a real shame. So taking a critical eye at that. And in my experience, speakers don't mind it if you are kind of gently helping them with this stuff. Okay, they don't take it personally. They know they're not experts, and therefore your role can be just to take a critical eye at these questions and make sure that they're clear. Okay, so then the final step, just in terms of maybe wrapping up some of these ideas, I've put together a sort of 5-step guide to interactive goodness, to how to really engage those delegates and make them feel like they're getting a valuable use out of the technology. So the first one, which we talked about already, is remove the barriers to participation. So if they need a device, you need a device to lend to them. If we need to make Wi-Fi, we make some adjustments to the Wi-Fi so it's easier to use, then you need to do that too. I'm sure you've all been to venues and you connect to their Wi-Fi, which is free, but then you get asked a whole load of torturous questions. The venue can take that stuff out if you ask the right questions, or if we ask the right questions. So let's get the barriers all removed, tell people nice and early that they need it and they need to download it. The second thing is the way that you introduce the technology. I have seen people introduce the technology to say, there was a short straw, ladies and gentlemen, and I got it. And the short straw is who gets to introduce the technology. Okay, now everyone in the audience knows that that person on stage does not trust the technology, and that will infect the audience. I have also seen people who very elegantly cajole everyone into using the technology. That introduction probably makes the single biggest difference to the participation you get. Worth investing 5 minutes in, as I said before. The third one is setting the ground rules and sticking to them. And actually, Dermott, you and I have failed to do this, so I should take my own medicine. But this is around how you use anonymity. Okay, so you either say that you've got anonymity and you stick to it, or you say you haven't got anonymity and you stick to that. But flipping between the two or being unclear is something that that is really important to get clear, because otherwise you don't get trust from the audience. The next one is go early. And what I mean by that is, if the technology is going to be used throughout the event, use it as soon as you possibly can. If you can get it in the first 10% of the agenda, then it's part of that sort of settling in activity where you can kind of do a bit of trial and error and people can make a mistake and get stuck and ask a question, it's okay. But if you leave it to halfway through the event, people don't feel now that they can ask those questions and have another go and that sort of thing. So get the voting in early, even if you have to slightly crowbar it, you'll be thanked for doing that, or you'll get more out of it. And then finally, acknowledge the input and follow-up. The thing I absolutely hate is when a speaker asks a question, looks at the results and says, interesting, and then moves on without acknowledging in any way why it was interesting or the significance of the vote. So I think that's really important, and also really important, for instance, with the questions when they come in, tell people what you're going to do with them. Are you going to show them all to them? Are you going to show a selection? Are you going to show the last 20? Are you going to show the most liked? Whatever it is, be really clear, and also say what you're going to do with them afterwards. Also really important. There you go.
That's great. Well, thanks very much. I mean, certainly going back to your point about the intro questions, one of my pet hates when I was on site doing the tech job was someone who'd ask, what did you have for breakfast? It's such a waste of a good opportunity to actually ask them a question that, needs to be easy for them to answer because it's their first time using the tech. Yeah. But you should get something out of it, or at least they should as well.
Absolutely.
We've got a couple of questions that we can jump into. So Brian's asked, Wi-Fi feels like a big risk, or still feels like a big risk with using apps at the bigger events. How do you deal with this? So I know you touched on it a little bit, but kind of just give a bit more detail if you can on what you do.
Yeah, so generally when we're working with clients and Wi-Fi is a focus point because you've got large numbers, they haven't tried the venue before or whatever, we will do an audit with the venue, and basically what we'll find out is, can the Wi-Fi in every area that you're running the event manage the concurrent number of connections that you need? So what that means is, if you've got 200 people at the event, and they're moving around the venue, then you need to be able to have 200 people connected in the main room, but also 200 in the lobby. Otherwise, you can't expect them to download the app and get logged in advance. And also in the breakout areas if they're moving around. So simple working of numbers, asking difficult questions about the number of radios they've got, which is the way that you can manage volume of connections. That sort of thing we do. The second thing, and the biggest problem I find, is this splash page. So what venues want to do is they want to basically set up a Wi-Fi that doesn't need much administration. And so what happens is, when you log in, the first time they ask you through a splash page for some information, and then at a point in the future, it could be an hour's time, could be 4 hours time, could be a day, could be a week, just depending on almost a whim of the venue, it will kick you out. So what happens is it kicks you out. You don't know it's kicked you out because you've still got your little Wi-Fi symbol. Then the speaker says, time to vote, guys. So you pull out your phone, you've got your speaker symbol, you've got your app, but you can't get the question. And the answer is, you've got to go back through that splash page again. So one of the things we work really hard with venues is, there is always a way of getting rid of that splash page, or resetting it at the very least so you only see it once in your whole conference experience. And then there's a load of other stuff. But one thing I will say is that Wi-Fi is getting better all the time, and we do know a lot more about a lot more venues. So although it's the critical point of failure in the whole solution, at least do the audit before you decide that it's actually not going to work, would be my advice.
All right, cheers. So Ellie's just asked a question about functionality of the app. So can you add meeting resources such as PDFs and links to external web pages to the app? Yes, absolutely. So the info screen on Meetoo, we've got some content about the session today, but you can put URLs in there. So you can't store a PDF, but you could link out to it if it's being stored online somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's there. We've got another one here from Sean. What other tips do you have for adoption of apps?
Yeah, that's a really good one. So a couple of them, Sean, that we've tried before. So one is the earlier you tell people about the availability of the app, the quicker that you can get going. So on the day. So tell people a week or two before, and make that absolutely part of the pre-event communication, so it's really clear that people are expected to use it. The second thing I like to do is actually in my pre-event communication to tell people not that we're going to be using the app, but why we're going to be using the app, and actually try and make it a little bit more specific. So rather than we want engagement, what I like to do is to say an objective of the event is to measure the level of confidence of the whole company going forwards. And the way we're going to do that is Meetoo. So if you want to tell us how confident you are, you really, really need to download this app. So make it clear the sorts of things you're going to be discussing and make it clear that that stuff is important. It's not just what you have for breakfast. Second point. And then the third thing that we've done is we've used influence through what we call ambassadors. So this works for internal organisations maybe better than customer groups. But what we've done is to use advocates within the business, given them a little crash course on how Meetoo works, how it's going to be used in the event. And we asked them to just go around and bug their workmates and to make sure that they've downloaded the app or they've had a chance to ask any questions. And very often people will be influenced by a colleague in a way that they won't be influenced by event communication. So, an hour of making 20 people feel special on a webinar like this and then telling them that they are ambassadors for using this technology going forward can lead to 100 to 300 more people using the app on the day and can be really, really impactful. And that, by the way, works for virtual as it does for face-to-face meetings.
Great, thanks, Chris. Okay, there's no other questions here at the moment, so if we just move on, but we'll leave the feed open so we can pick some of those up. And I really don't want to go over our time too much, but just a little plug of some regular webinars that we run here. So some jump starters if you want to figure out a little bit about Meetoo and see it in action and participate. You can register for those. I've pasted them out to the app. We do some tips, and then there's product updates as well. Then I'd just like to do a bit of promotion here for the Crystal Interactive workshop that they're going to be doing. And Chris, if you'd like to...
yeah, of course, thank you. Yeah, so this is on the 27th of May. It's at Fenchurch Place in London. This is really an opportunity for, if you come along to that, it's really an opportunity for you to learn from your peers in the industry about how to make the most of event technology in live events. So there's some thoughts from us, some experiences along the lines of what you've heard today, but looking at a broader range of technologies, but most importantly is an opportunity for you to find out from other event organisers what's worked for them.
Brilliant, thanks. And then I just want to ask a little poll here now, just at the end. So, based on what you've heard today, can you see yourself actually using Meetoo at a future conference or large event? So, hopefully, Chris isn't judging my scale here too much. But would you would you definitely use it? Would you probably use it? Are you not sure yet? Do you think not? You still need a bit of convincing, or no, you definitely wouldn't do. So I'm not going to dwell on this too much. We've got a good few responses in there, so I shall close the poll. And we'll have a look and see how successful we've been today. I don't think that's too bad. Good to see that so many of you would definitely use it.
I was one of those, definitely.
Were you?
Yeah. Were you?
No, I didn't respond actually. No. Don't want to skew. But those of you that are not sure, so please do use the messaging feed here to ask some more questions if you want, and hopefully Chris will agree to help me answer those going forward, and we'll get back to you on that. And then, so just a quick evaluation poll for us here. So, what do you think of this webinar? Was it a waste of time through to extremely valuable? Now, we're not going to share these results live. We will look at them afterwards, but please be brutally honest. This is the only way that we can improve these sessions. I really appreciate getting your honest feedback, and after we get the results of this question, I'll ask you to post anything into the feed in terms of a way that we can actually improve going forward. So I think we shall take it there, so we can just move through. Okay, thank you very much. And like I say, please post some any improvements we can make, but also any other questions, and we will definitely get back to you. We will answer them in the app, but we'll also post them out as part of the follow-up, some responses to those questions. So please keep them coming in. Just a couple of notes here. Please don't forget to do certain things. Leave us a Trustpilot review. I'm just about to post that out. We really need your help to spread the word of Meetoo. Check out our YouTube channel. The video of this will be going up later this afternoon. So you can watch it, share it with some colleagues, as well as any of the other resources there. And we're running a little offer for any of you that don't have a free account already. Go to meetoo.com and sign up for your free account. If you do it by Friday, you could be in with a chance to win your free first year of an annual full access account. So that's there for you to get onto now. So I think we're all done. We've run a little bit over, but I could have sat here chatting to you about it all day, Chris. I really appreciate you taking the time. So thank you very much for
thank you
helping
for having
out.
me. Great fun.
Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
We hope to see you on the next one.